IVM.
Hey everybody, welcome to another week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you are not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Paytm Money. As we head into week 4 of lockdown, we're doing our best to make sure that we maintain our schedules and try and get you as many of the podcasts that you're used to listening as we possibly can, but beg your indulgence if there are any slippages in schedules and times. With that, let's just get on with your show.
After living 25 years in exile, the definition of home is changed. I think people who showed solidarity, who love me, there's like-minded people who, support me, they are my home. And my home is everywhere. In Paris, people who showed their solidarity towards me, who, showed their support, I feel at home.
Hello and welcome to the Filter Coffee Podcast. I'm very privileged to have with me today a guest who's been an inspiration to millions like me. Taslima Nasreen is a writer, physician, feminist, secular humanist, and a human rights activist. She's known for writing on women's oppression and criticism of religion, despite having been forced into exile for the last 25 years. Taslima is the author of over 40 works of fiction and non-fiction in Bengali, which have been published in over 30 different languages worldwide. Taslima's new book, Shameless, written in her native tongue Bangla, is being published by HarperCollins in English. In fact, it is just published. The book is translated by Arunava Sinha, who I also have the pleasure of hosting as a guest in this episode. Arunava translates classic, modern and contemporary Bengali fiction, non-fiction and poetry from India and Bangladesh into English. More than 50 of his translations have been published just in India so far. He teaches translation and creative writing at the Ashoka University. Welcome to the Filter Coffee Podcast, Arunava and Taslima.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Firstly, how are you both doing in these strange times? Taslima, how are you doing in the lockdown?
So I am in isolation, me and my cat, and a little bit worried because of this coronavirus pandemic, because I am about 50 plus and I have diabetes and hypertension. If I get coronavirus, I will die. So I try to be very careful. I don't go out at all. Let's see.
Right. That must be very, very hard for you. What is your cat's name, if we may ask?
Minu. No, but Minu is having problems because Minu is crying. Minu is not getting fresh fish, because fish market is closed. Machli Mundi is closed, so she's not getting fish. I cannot, provide her any fresh fish. So she doesn't eat, other food. So it's, and she's old now. She's 16 years old. And in human terms, she's 80. And she doesn't eat dry food, which actually she should. But because she's old and her teeth are not that strong, so she can't eat. So she's waiting for fish. I am waiting for fish. I don't know what would happen, how I can manage.
It must be really, really hard for her, especially, I guess, with the heaviness in the situation.
Yeah.
Arunava, how are you holding up?
We are fine. Taslima, I'm sorry to hear about that, but I'm sure you'll be okay because you're staying at home, right? And if you don't go out at all, then you're completely isolated from everyone. It'll be hard for you to do that, but I don't suppose there's a choice.
But because sometimes I have to buy vegetables or some things from outside. Some people help me to bring all those things, but virus can come with all those things. I try to use gloves and mask and try to wash with soap water all those vegetables and whatever comes from outside. But you never know. So, But what can we do? We have to be careful, otherwise,
And I guess also your mental well-being is going to be very, very critical at this point, right? I really hope things easen out for you and Meenu. But in fact, when we talk about, isolation and being by yourself, it's nothing new for you. You wrote this book, Shameless, Taslima, in 2017 after you had returned from Europe, where you were living for over a decade. You were living in a flat in Rawdon Street under the protection of the Kolkata police, and you were under tremendous pressure. I think the state government was at that point telling you that they were unable to give you any further protection and that it was best that you leave the city, state, or better, even the country. So I'm guessing it's not necessarily a great time to create, right? Many would argue that. How was Shameless born in these stressful times?
Yeah. I was forced to live under house arrest in Kolkata in 2007, and I had nothing to do, I couldn't go out, I couldn't meet people, no friends could come to see me at my home. So I was isolated at that time also. I had Meenu with me. At that time I started writing this book, and I finished that book when I was in Kolkata. But it was nothing new for me, because as a girl, in Bangladesh, I was not be allowed to go outside a lot because I was a girl. Because, I could be sexually harassed if I go outside. So I had to stay at home. And only the school and in college I could go. Otherwise, I had to stay at home. So, and then when I started writing, when I was, critical of religion, the Islamic fundamentalists issued fatwa against me. They demanded my execution by hanging. And I was physically harassed when I was at a book fair or outside. So I had to stay at home. So self-isolation is nothing new to me,
Yes.
So, and also in 2007, I had to stay at home because I was forced to live, under house arrest. And also when I was thrown out of Calcutta, in Delhi also I was forced to live under house arrest for a few months. It was UPA government, and then I had to leave the country.
This is
2007 and 8. Yeah. And also before that in Bangladesh, when Bangladeshi government filed a case against me on the charges of blasphemy, I had to go into hiding.
Right.
And at that time I was, staying at home, and I was not allowed to go outside.
This is the mid-90s, 94, 95.
It was 94. Yeah. And fatwa was issued, they demanded my execution by hanging, and government was against me. Government banned my book. Government, arrest warrant was issued. So it is, I'm not very, it's, what I told you, that it's not new for me. I can live alone in a house without going outside, without receiving friends. It happened to me. So I can manage, I think. I can manage.
You can manage is one thing, but I think the creation of Shameless was in a way also the result of all of these pressures you were facing at that point, right? In 2017. Can you talk to us about how it was born, how the book was born?
When I was living in Kolkata, I was thinking that in my book Lajja, the protagonist with his family actually left Bangladesh for India. They came to West Bengal. So I imagined they are living in Kolkata, the same city I was living at that time. So I imagined their life in Kolkata. Are they happy? If the people actually in reality left Bangladesh, Hindu people left Bangladesh for West Bengal or for India, are they happy? How are they? They are living, what kind of life they are having? So I imagine their life, and then I involved as a writer. I became a character of the book. So I met them. They came to me. I met the characters of my fiction. So I think it is interesting. When I was writing, I also enjoyed that. I found it is interesting that I am one of the characters, and I met them. The creator met all these the fictional characters. It is interesting, but anyway, so the book is not political. It's just social and personal, but personal is political anyway.
Yes, personal is very, very political. Arunava, you've translated many books. You worked with some amazing authors. And, as we hear Taslima's story behind how Shameless came about, I also read somewhere that it was one intense burst for her. How critical is it for a translator to go through the same emotional journey and identify with it as you're working on the book?
I don't think that's entirely possible, even, frankly. I mean, you cannot replicate the state of mind of the writer when you're translating, and I don't think it's even legitimate to try. But you're also, in a sense, the very close reader of the text. And the text is therefore doing to you the things that the writer wants the read. You're affected the way that the writer wants the reader to be affected. And perhaps because you're reading it more closely than any other reader, I dare say you might even be reading it more closely than the writer herself. You are therefore bound to be affected in a very intense way, given the writer's skills. So that certainly happened when I was translating this novel. And in fact, I have a question for Taslima in this context, because she just mentioned that, Taslima, you mentioned that you are a character in this novel, which you are, of course, by name and by circumstance. Yeah. You identify yourself as the creator of the characters, and you will describe the house you live in and so on. But I have a feeling that person is not entirely you. I mean, the circumstances are the same as yours, but you have also imagined Taslima as a character in this book. What would you say to that?
Yes, I appeared there as Taslima, as the writer, and I had police protection. What was happening to me, I described everything, but it's a reality. But again, fiction. I met Shuranjan. Exactly. This is fiction. I went to Shuranjan's house and I met Zulekha and others. Those are fiction.
Yes.
So it is fiction and reality together. So you have to find out which one is reality and which one is fiction. So I think that clever readers will find out.
Yes, but I think what is remarkable, what happens is that because Taslima, you made yourself a character, you therefore can now get Dadik personally involved with the characters, which of course you cannot do as only a narrator. So that makes it very fascinating. And as I was reading the book as I was translating it, Karthik, because that's what I usually try to do rather than read it beforehand. Because, then that discovery process is very raw, and that somehow percolates into your translation. So, I was wondering what is going on inside this Taslima's head, the Taslima in the book. And I realized that she has not created a truly omniscient narrator. She has created a narrator who also is looking at it from a certain perspective, as you would do perhaps if you were writing in the first person. And therefore, not everything that the Taslima in the book says also necessarily has to be accepted as exactly what is happening. It is Taslima's version of what is happening, So, and the novel itself rests in a place of speculation. I don't want to give away anything, but you are constantly doubting as you read. You're wondering what is going on, what really happened versus the way the characters are reimagining what really happened.
That's beautiful.
So it's quite fascinating and it's very meta, because then you have the author herself as a character who is imagining or making it up, or it really happened. So, it's a wonderful labyrinth.
I try to make the characters complex. It's not like this. Okay, this is happening, he's thinking this, and already, it would happen like this. The readers will not actually figure out what is happening, because people are complex. And in many novels, especially in Bengali novels, the novelists, I think, do not try to create complex character. People, we are complex. We just don't decide one thing and always actually our decision remains the same. No, we change. And also here in my book, Shuranjan and Julekha and other characters, Maya, they are constantly changing. They're constantly changing their decision. They are also changing. It's like real people. Real people also are complex. They sometimes they tell truth. Sometimes they lie. Sometimes they are very good. Sometimes they are very bad. Sometimes they are cruel. It's human beings are like this. So in my book, actually the characters are like that. They make mistakes. Sometimes they regret, and sometimes actually they become very, very soft to others. Sometimes they're very cruel. So I try to create like this. And in the end of the book, actually, kind of some women realize that they should fight for their rights. It's kind of probably at the end.
Don't give it away. But you know what Taslima is saying? So as a result, the characters are thinking as they go along. So they're not perfectly structured in the way they speak, in the way their thoughts are expressed. So there is this kind of frenzy, there's this kind of energy in the writing, which I think I was more struck by than anything else. So I was traveling along with the characters themselves as they discover their world and their own relationship to it. And very interestingly, the Taslima character also is in the same process, discovering her own relationship with the world she inhabits. It's not like she is in a place where she knows everything and everything has fallen into place and there is perfect clarity. So for all the characters, it's a huge journey of discovery. At least as a reader, that's what I felt. And that necessarily means that your prose is not, calm and composed and very coldly aesthetic. No, it's very charged. It's uneven. It follows the rhythms of thought. It has that kind of manic mental energy that, you acquire when you are going through a time of deep crisis or when you're going through a deep transformation. And really most of the characters here go through massive crises, both active and of crisis of their own making and crisis created by other people's actions. So that was, I hesitate to use the word challenge because that's a bit cliched, but that was very much a moving goalpost, to capture, to aim for when I was translating.
That's beautiful. And if you had not mentioned it, Arunava, I wouldn't have guessed that you were translating it, along with your first reading of it simultaneously, right? That's something I wouldn't have guessed intuitively about your process. But I must say,
another thing is that Taslima there is narrating, she's the author of the book and also she is the character. But I didn't make this Taslima character very nice or, very good or very, not kind of saying. She is also very jealous. She is also very, very she fell in love, and she, she's not. She didn't do everything right. What I found that I was actually enjoying when Taslima, the fictional character there, was actually misbehaving with others or, jealous. It was, it's like I wrote my autobiography. 7 books of my autobiography were published. In those books, actually, I did not say that whatever I did or everything I did was right or good. Many mistakes I have described of mine. In that book also, in Shameless also, Taslima was not perfect.
I get that she's flawed, but I just wanted to ask you if you have ever done this before, which is have Taslima as a character, either called Taslima or not, in any of your fictional works before this?
In my novels and short stories, I describe my feelings and my experiences, but probably they are not, me, but some other women. So, of course, all writers do. They put their experience through other people. So it happens.
Right. And both of you spoke about the characters being flawed, and I think even in Lajja, Suranjan is the son who believes that nationalism will be stronger than communalism, but progressively he's disappointed, right, in the work. Right? If you look at, and you yourself mentioned a couple of times that this is not a work of politics. This is more of a work that is societal in nature and about human relationships. And in your note, actually, in the author's note in the book, you also mentioned that Suranjan has grown indifferent to politics. Right? In a way, is he reflecting your current state of mind when it comes to politics?
Suranjan lost interest in politics. I think that sometimes when I look around, when I look at the politics of the subcontinent, I don't have any interest, because I find that the politicians are lying, politicians are not doing, things for the people, for the well-being of people, for the country. They are selfish. They are doing only for their own interest. So I lost interest as well as Suranjan in my fiction.
So in a way, it is a reflection of what you're going through. Arunava, when you translate a work like this, right, and especially with an author like Taslima, while she's indifferent to politics now, her views on society, religion, etc. is very well known. Is it important for you to share a worldview with the author?
No, it's not important to have a perfectly congruent worldview. It certainly helps if you are broadly on the same page. Because if there are very direct points of opposition, then it might somewhere filter through in the form of discomfort into the translated prose. So in that sense, I guess we are lucky. And I think, in a sense, Taslima also would not have agreed to my translating her book had she not known that very broadly we are in the same space, even if there are individual points of divergence, which there well might be. I mean, I don't know if there are, just that we haven't discussed them. But yeah, I mean, if I were to suddenly have to translate a book written by a very, someone who might be a fine writer, but is thinks communally or thinks in a bigoted manner, or does not have an open liberal outlook, or does not believe in equality among genders, or does not believe, in fact, the one thing that Taslima and I are absolutely in agreement on is our atheism. So that's a great comfort. I often find it, I won't say difficult, but I am always wondering whether a writer I'm translating, is a firm believer in God and religion. And while that does not prevent me from translating them, and as for most of our friends are probably, or many of our friends, if not most, are in that same space, that doesn't prevent us from liking them. But, you always wonder whether something will slip in that you will be uncomfortable with. In fact, I once translated a novel long ago by a dead author, where I actually had to put in a translator's note saying that I do not concur with the following views in this novel. They are the novelist and not mine.
Right.
And also, as an author, I think that I feel comfortable when, like-minded people who are, if the translators are like-minded and translate my book, sometimes very religious person, very misogynist translate my books, and all the time I'm worried, what will they do?
Yeah, this reminds me, I think, of a recent a press statement you had made, Taslima, which is about when all the conversation was happening around citizen amendment bill in India, etc. You'd spoken about how it is important to also keep in mind the non-believers, the atheists, when revelations like this are happening. Right? Were there any takers for that line of thinking?
Yeah, in Muslim community, the people who are, I should say, ex-Muslims, they were Muslims but became atheists, became non-believers, and they're very critical of Islam in Bangladesh. And they get, hacked to death. They get persecuted, they are in prison, and the Islamic terrorists are killing them. Many of them left Bangladesh for Europe and America. But if, India could accept them and give them shelter, because they are in, they could be, killed anytime in Bangladesh. So those people are persecuted, as well as those Muslim background people who are critical of Islam. They are writers, or they are not writers. So many atheists were killed by fanatics, by terrorists in Bangladesh. So they could get shelter in India.
Well, it seems like a very distant view to the kind of discourse we've had in this country, at least in the last year or so. I want to come back to you, Taslima, on the politics of this just before we close. But since both of you were talking about being congruous on certain beliefs, Arunava, is it in your process? Are there times when you're translating a work this complicated that you guys talk when you're unsure about something? Is it a collaborative exercise?
It could be. But to be honest, the quality of a writer's work lies in how few questions I have to ask rather than how many. So in that way, Taslima's book was like a hot knife through butter. I didn't have to ask any questions at all, because I think I had a clear reading of where it was going, and she read the draft afterwards. So no, in that sense, it wasn't a live collaboration.
Taslima, I want to ask you something, outside this book. I think, like all great creators, the cities you live in have an important connection to your creative process, right? And I think this is true in your writing as well. You're now in Delhi, and what's your relationship with Delhi?
It was not my choice. When I had to leave Bangladesh in 1994, it was a plan, actually, by European Parliament to take me to a safe country in Europe. So I ended up in Sweden. So I became Swedish citizen. I lived in Sweden and Germany, in France, and also I lived in America. But I always longed for my country. I wanted to go back to my country, but it was not possible. The door was closed. So I actually missed my language and Bengali environment. So I decided to come to Kolkata. So in the beginning, for 6 years, I didn't get any visa for India. So whenever I got the visa, I started coming to Kolkata. There I have friends, I have publishers, So I feel so comfortable staying in Kolkata. So I decided to live in Kolkata since 2004, I started living in Kolkata. So when I was thrown out of West Bengal, after living there for 3.5 years, my dream was to live in Bengal, because either, East Bengal or West Bengal, because I'm a Bengali writer. I write in Bengali, I think in Bengali, everything in Bengali. So I couldn't live outside Bengal, not in Europe or America. Even though I had, I was a celebrated author in Europe. I got so much respect, so much honor there, but still I wanted to live in Bengal. So it was my dream. My dream was not to live in Delhi, but because I'm not allowed to go back to West Bengal or East Bengal, so it is the only city there where I am allowed to live. And also it is near Bengal, so it is my satisfaction that my friends can come to meet me, and and India is, Bengali is India's one of the languages, so I feel comfortable here. I would feel much more comfortable if I could be allowed to live in Bengal, in Kolkata, if not Dhaka. So it is that I have no other alternative, so I am living in New Delhi. So pollution is, I have problem to live in air pollution, but what can I do? But it is much better. I feel that I am not in Europe or America. I am in the subcontinent. That gives me satisfaction.
Right. And I hope, I think if there is anything that helps during the lockdown, I think it's the fact that the air quality has become significantly better in our city. Taslima, it's now been 25 years since you've been in exile, right? I think it recently was the 25th year.
25
years. Are you tired? In times like this, what gives you hope and keeps you going?
No, I'm not tired. It's not, Bangladesh, I don't feel that it's my home anymore. After living 25 years in exile, the definition of home is changed. I think people who showed solidarity, who love me, there's like-minded people who, support me, they are my home. And my home is everywhere, in Paris, people who showed their solidarity towards me, who, showed their support, I feel at home. So it could be anywhere, in Canada, in Berlin, in India, everywhere. So I feel that people are my home, not any place, not anymore. I don't, if I ever get any chance to go back to Bangladesh, where I was born and brought up, I don't think that I would feel at home, because most of the people, if they don't support me, if they don't, share my views, if they oppose me all the time, if they want to kill me, why should I feel at home there? So home means love. Wherever I get love, I feel at home.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful and so inspiring. I hope the lockdown sort of is easier on you. I hope the physician in you is more conscious than than anything else. But are you what are you reading or watching these days, Taslima? What's keeping you occupied?
I'm watching these days news a lot to know what is happening in the world.
Can be good.
And trying to read and write, but it's hard to concentrate. It's it's difficult though, but trying to write and read both. You're reading feminist books.
Wonderful.
And writing also, and sometimes watching movies.
That's wonderful. Anything from what you watched or read recently that you would want to recommend to this audience?
I have watched a movie, Shoplifters. It's a Japanese movie. I really like it very much. And also Capernaum is wonderful. And some of the movies, science fiction, I like science fiction a lot. The Road and The Survivalist, these are so, post-apocalyptic movie. We are kind of in similar situation,
Right.
So I hope that human will not be extinct.
That's beautiful. I wouldn't have assumed before this call that Taslima was a zombie fan, but very happy to know that. Arunava, what about you? What are you watching, reading, or listening to?
I don't really get too much time to watch because my normal working life continues. I teach at the Ashoka University and we're doing classes online.
Right.
So the semester is in full flow. And it takes a little more time actually to talk to students individually because we can't meet on campus. So I'm doing that, and I do my other work, which is to run the book section on scroll.in, and then I'm translating as well. So it's pretty much a full life plus additional housework. So yeah, not much time.
But you should sometimes watch good movies.
I know I should, but something I have to give up on. And it turns out that, between reading and writing and watching films, it's always films that suffer.
That's very interesting. But definitely you should check out Shoplifters. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah. Now that you've told me, yes.
And of course, another thing that the audience can do is they now can read Shameless on Kindle or any other ebook platform, I'm assuming. Congratulations to the both of you on the release of the book. And as published by HarperCollins, of course. And
thank you.
Stay safe, and thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Karthik. Thank you for this conversation, and you be well too.
Thank you, Taslima. Thanks, Arunava.
Bye, Taslima. Very nice talking.
Bye.
So that was our show. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcasts.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, I am _Karthik. That's Karthik with an H on Twitter. And filter_coffee. That's coffee with a K on Instagram.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, the show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance. From stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.
Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, Don Bradman, and now Cyrus Brocha. Okay, probably not in the right company. I mean, Don Bradman is Australian. But it's called Cyrus Says, a wonderful show about everything. Find the show on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.